just
are.
told me it just started.
Welcome,
Yes.
ladies, to our 16th episode of a live event here for the Crazy Writer Chicks. I can't believe it's been 16 weeks. Can anybody else? It seems like every time I add another week to this, it seems like we just started. But as usual, my name is Nikki Rome. I am here tonight with Winter Navi and Rebecca White. And as you can see in our bottom corner, we have a very special guest this week, Isabel Lerma. And she is here talking with us about creativity, being uninhibited creativity, which I'm really quite interested in what your definition is of that. But let's just start. We'll kick it off with you, Isabel. I'll ask you to share a little bit about yourself, and then we'll kind of work our way through the rest of today's event because we got questions
Sure.
for you. We want to know all the things. So first of all, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm very honored to be here. I found out about Crazy Writer Chicks from Winter, who's my writing coach. And a business that I just recently started is Drunk Writers. About 9 years ago, I moved to Paris, France from San Francisco. I quit my corporate job and moved there temporarily for 6 months. My job actually gave me a leave of absence. I could figure my life out and I could go back if I didn't make it. And about 5 months in, I said I wasn't coming back. And pretty soon after I got there, I started this writing group. And basically we get together and everyone brings me a bottle of wine and we drink and we write and I make timed writing prompts. And it brought me so much joy and it really helped me to create. And I also, I made Drunk Writers as a safe space for me because I was very ashamed at that time, I think, to showcase like my creative side. And so, yeah, it's all about like, the wine kind of helped with the whole creating uninhibited part because we used it to, kind of blame the alcohol a little bit on being able to want to share and want to create. And I wouldn't say that eventually, and actually right away, it kind of was as the leader of the group, I had to be the example in sharing my pieces, my 5-minute writing pieces. And that was it would have been very difficult for me outside of it. And I saw that in the group as time went on, all my introverts who never wanted to share were starting to share. And then even outside of their lives, they started up successful blogs. Some of them started getting published. We ended up, from Drunk Writers, we did the 48-hour film project. So we actually got to create movies in 48 hours and kind of spun off the drunk acting and then Drunk Writers Travel, where I traveled all over Europe. I started singing in Paris actually and wrote my first song in London because I was invited by one of my Drunk Writers members who moved there. So when I talk about like creating uninhibitedly, like that's where, I want to encourage people to really not care so much about what other people think. And when they get into the space of Drunk Writers, it's like that's the number one forefront is to not judge yourself. You don't have to share your pieces if you don't want to, but the power really comes in sharing your pieces. Because once you get it out there, you're changed. It no longer, that story that was trapped inside you is now outside and can now be enjoyed by other people. And then you can start to see the impact of that. So that's what it means to me. And I want to say, honestly, thank you to Winter because she has really helped me tap into this and help me turn this from a hobby into a business. And I'm actually helping people now in a professional way.
Very cool. Very cool. I love the form of payment, right? If I can get people to bring me wine, then I'll be happy to read their stuff too.
Yes.
That's interesting though, because I've heard of a lot of writing groups, but typically people are working on their own and bringing their own projects to group for other people to read. But it sounds like primarily your stuff it starts from writing prompts. Is that right?
Yes. And the way
everybody's writing off the same prompts.
Yeah, pretty much everyone is writing off the same prompts, and I like to play games. So people we do lots of icebreakers, and and what people don't get is that's where I get my writing prompts from. You know, usually people come up with some interesting things and I'm like, ooh, I can create a prompt out of that. And what's kind of cool is everybody writes on the same thing, but there's so many perspectives. And once you start seeing all of that, it's pretty amazing. And when people stop judging themselves so much, like there's so much they can come up with in 5 minutes. Or 5 to 10 minutes, you know, and like I feel like I grow so much from hearing other people do the writing prompts, and even when like I don't allow any criticism or any type of criticism, because I always tell people it's only 5 minutes, but I can't stop myself sometimes in sharing. Like I start, you know, breaking myself down, and everyone in the group's like, "Hey, you can't do that," and I'm like, "Oh my God, this is amazing." You know, because it really is about allowing yourself to really express yourself and not to judge the things that come out of you. I mean, I was writing about things that I would never want like my parents to hear about. You know, I was writing on prompts like, and I was inspired by so many people that I was meeting in Paris. And I like to write in the first person. And people are like, Isabel, you did it. I'm like, no, I didn't do this. But I'm able to kind of like put myself in somebody else's shoes, you know? And so I really like feeling that way. I like playing a villain. I love, you know, killing my characters. It was just kind of like, Isabel, you're so sweet and nice. I'm like, oh, but I get to really let my creativity fly in this, and you can do whatever you want in this universe. So, and that's I can't wait to bring this out to more people. And I know that that's what you guys are doing too. You guys are helping writers like find their voice. So I really am very honored to be among you ladies. So, and very honored to be asked to be here.
We're happy to have you.
Very much so. Can you talk about some of the prompts that you've done with some of your writers?
Yeah, sure. So recently, I just helped somebody who she wants to do some YouTube videos, and she's talking about migraines, helping people with intense migraines and using other types of therapy, not just, you know, like traditional, you know, prescription, etc., but other ways that she's been able to help herself. So we were talking about like, how can you reach we talked about certain videos that she's going to do. So one of the writing prompts that I gave her was describe migraine as if it was a person. Like, you know, like what if you were meeting a migraine character for the first time? What are they like? And it was amazing what she wrote about it. Even asking her to describe what is a migraine, like what would a migraine feel like if you were describing it to a blind person. And I remember she was describing it, it's like someone stabbing yourself in the eye and then wanting to kill people. Like, you know, like that. And I was like, wow, that is very, very vivid and very graphic. I thought that was a really great thing for her to capture, because I thought that would make people like capture their attention. And then another prompt that we also worked on is, and she really enjoyed this, is I love to rewrite song lyrics. So she had the song by Slipknot that she called the migraine song. It doesn't say anything about migraines, but it does have like the first line is I push my fingers in my eyes. You know, it's very like dramatic, right? But she got very excited to rewrite the lyrics to that. So I'm like excited about all these things. Like it's very creative, and it's always new. And then like from our sessions, like what's amazing is she's texting me after. She goes, Isabel, everything is flowing after I talk. So I really like that. I also want to credit Winter for telling me about the Recorder app, the text app. I've been like bouncing around trying to find one. I really like Recorder app. And so I told her about that too. So now she has an option, not just with writing, although I like to focus on writing during our sessions, but now she has this other vehicle to use where she can talk her ideas out. So again, like a lot of ripple effects from being able to work with Winter.
It's been a pleasure working with you. I really love it.
Me too.
But you don't only help people through writing. You also help them through other creative means.
Yes.
And you help other creatives. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, sure. I'll speak on this one just because it's one of my most vivid memories. But I remember when I was invited to London, I got to visit this art gallery where there were a lot of artists that were going to be putting out their paintings, and so I was surrounded by all these creative people, and we decided to have an impromptu drunk writers event where the artists and all the people that were there, we took each artist's piece and we wrote on it. So I timed it between 5 to 10 minutes, and then everyone submitted their pieces. And again, it was really crazy. I remember this one piece. We didn't know what it was. It was like it looked like grainy and sandy. That's all I could say what it was. And the artist didn't want to tell us what it was a picture of. So it was crazy what people came up with it. And later on, we found out it was a zoomed up close up of a place in the world, like from a satellite view, zoomed all the way in. And like people just went crazy with it. I think there was one person made a murder mystery, and I forgot what I think I wrote something along. I wrote some kind of fantasy about Aladdin's lamp, just because I was, inspired by the sand. But it was just really cool, and 3 of my pieces were chosen, and so they were posted next to the art pieces, which I thought was a cool melding of written art versus picture art. And stuff like that. And I constantly do in my writing sessions, with my drunk writer sessions, my group sessions, I love to invite artists. We had a Vogue photographer, one of my friends in Paris, and he has kind of like an erotica website that's like definitely NSFW and very provocative, but gorgeous photos. And just, so I took them to his page and we all looked at it and we all picked pictures, and everyone wrote like an kind of an erotica story on it. Another one that I really liked, I think an erotica night, we had one where I think they called it the $6 million indecent proposal. So it was like, okay, you're going into a room, there's $6 million, and this guy's giving it to you, but you have to give one night of whatever he wants. And people were like, ooh, it was crazy what people were taking out of that, but people were writing on the story. It was interesting to see how the men took it a little more pornographic, and the women were more on the feelings and emotions of grappling with this decision. So it was very eye-opening, and I didn't even think that it was like when I was doing drunk writers, I didn't think of it as being therapeutic. But what was kind of happening was people started reaching out to me and saying, wow, those exercises really made me think about how I am, how I act in my life, how I interact with other people, and in even seeing other people's perspectives, like seeing like, oh, I'm very reserved about my sexuality, etc. So I thought that was, again, like, wow, I didn't know. And so you just never know how much art can really like affect us. It can affect our psyche and how we see and interact with the rest of the world. So I think this is like a way for people to tap into knowing who they are without necessarily under the guise of I'm going to get therapy. This is actually a way for you to force yourself into an uncomfortable but safe position to really create and express.
Yeah, that's interesting. It sounds, I guess, a little scary, right? Like anytime that you have to. I know in college we would do, in a writing class that I took, you would have to share, X number of pages every week and then put it off to certain people. And it was always so intimidating, but it wasn't necessarily a safe environment. So I could see how having an environment where the criticism is not, that's not the point of it, right? Because in a writing class, that's kind of the point of it.
Yes.
But in a setting where you're just doing it for the sake of expressing,
yes,
that's nice.
Now in Paris, we did have open mics. So there was a famous open mic place called Café au Chat Noir, which is a very, very famous bar in Paris. And underground, they have these open mics once a week. So I would take whoever was the braver of my drunk writers, and and it's a bar, so we get to drink again and get some liquid courage and share some of the pieces that we'd worked on. And I want to say that it's probably one of the bravest, because I wrote some pieces that like I said, I didn't think I would ever share to the world, but I showcased it there. And so like I said, and I feel like doing that helped other people find the courage to do it too. So I think it's really important to know that, you know, if you're leading this charge, it is going to be uncomfortable, but people are looking to you to be that example and show them it's not so scary once you do it. And I think that's what helped me, because I knew that if I didn't do it, maybe they wouldn't do it either. So I was like, I've got to just go. I've just got to get over it. And so I'm very, very just blessed to know that they gave me that gift, that courage to go out and do that.
I've heard it said, write drunk, edit sober.
Yes. So that's yeah. So that's
kind
our
of
motto.
the idea. Oh, is
Yes.
it?
Yeah, that's our motto. Actually,
I missed that.
We've had a lot of discussions over this because, you know, it's credited to Ernest Hemingway, although he claimed he did not say it and he did not condone, you know, being drunk and writing. I think he might condone being tipsy and writing, but not drunk.
There's a point where it would no longer be used,ful. You know,
Exactly.
I mean, you could reach a point where.
Yes, actually, I ended up having to have a bunch of rules, and I was like, be a functioning drunk, or you know, I'm like, I'm not babysitting you guys. Okay, like no. But no, I want to say that for the most part, like I think what people are surprised about is they think we get drunk first and then we write, and it's like, no, we just get started writing, and the liquor is there for you if you need it. And but from the get-go, like I've had people who didn't drink for personal or religious reasons as part of the group. And I mean, I love having them. I mean, I loved having them there, like, you know, and yeah.
So the drinking is not enforced.
No, drinking drinking is not enforced, but people really look forward to it. And I may have, at least in the beginning, tricked people into thinking it's going to be more drinking than writing. It's actually more writing. But like, there's lots of opportunities, obviously, to socialize. And some of these events, like, especially like where we were, and if we had a big group, like we'd have 30 people, like it could last till 2 a.m. Like people just didn't want to leave because we're having so much fun drinking and eating and sharing stories. And but I also love like the one-on-ones, and I love the small groups too, because number one, we get to do way more writing. And it just feels more intimate. And I want to say that it's even more therapeutic, I think, because people are more willing to let their guard down. The big groups are really fun because people just, you know, they just let their freak flag fly most of the time because it's a big group. And so we get a lot of funny stories, and we get a lot of like, you know, just a lot of drunk people having fun at the end of the night. How's that?
It almost sounds like the creativity part comes into play even before. Like, I know for me, I'd be perfectly fine sitting down writing a reading prompt, but I would need to drink in order to read it to someone else or to give it to someone else. Like, that's where the drinks would be beneficial for someone like me. Like, oh, I'll write it all day long, but if you want to read it and then talk to me about it, then we need to have some drinks.
That's actually what we say. Like when it's time to share, I'm like, okay, who needs some liquid courage? But I want to say that like now it's like I can't stop people from sharing. Like, so I think there was a slow
Once you
wrap
get a
up.
safe environment, it feels different, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I think people start to realize, like, you know, their stuff is really good. Like, it's really good for 5 minutes, you know, or like, I mean, once they really get into it and they're just writing from the heart, like, there's, like I tell everyone, there's no right and there's no wrong. You know, whatever comes out is what it comes out, and that's why we say write drunk, edit sober, edit it later, or don't share it if you care so much. Share it when it's finished. But I would say that everyone wants to share, like, right when they write it. Because it's just pure and
excited about it.
Yeah.
But you also force people to write uncensored because your prompts are all timed.
Yes. And if I see them thinking instead of writing, like, they know I'm gonna call them out. And be like, keep writing. You know, it's like you only have 5 minutes, and sometimes like even telling them, okay, 1 minute left. 2-minute warning, you know, and I actually give them more than 5 minutes, like, you know, because if I see that someone is really into writing, like I know they need more 5 minutes. But the fact that people think they only have 5 minutes, it kind of like, right, you do or die, like either you do it or you don't. So, you know, and I always say this, like people like end up, I think, whether it's the alcohol, whether it's the whole social situation, maybe it's the peer pressure, but they do end up like, I'm just gonna say whatever I think. And, you know, and I think it's the way I do my writing prompts, it's very open-ended. I even tell people, if you don't like it, do something else. If you don't like what I just wrote, if it goes into a tangent into something else, or if you're already working on something and you want to share that, do that. And people do. And I don't get offended. And in fact, I love it because it's like, you know, it takes the pressure off of me of trying to create the perfect prompt. And I used to think that. I think my other moderators, when they tried to take over, they were stressing themselves out. And I told them, I said, you guys are giving a gift. You know, you're giving a gift of yourself. You're giving your time. And just know that, just trust it. Just trust that it's gonna work when it works, and it won't work all the time for everybody. And that's why you try different things. And that's what I try to do. I try to do different prompts, especially in the group settings. The one-on-ones I'm really loving because it's very tailored to whoever's in front of me. And I want to call it, maybe because of all the training that I had from doing many sessions of drunk writers with so many people, I think I have an arsenal of so-called writing prompts, but I can like go to you and be like, you know, what are you needing to work on? And what I've started to see is, because I've been working with a brilliant doctor called Dr. Trivedi, and he's really helped. He really studies the brain, why we think the way we do, why we act the way we do, and what blockages block us from going for the things that we want. And now I feel like because he's helped me, I'm also helping other people with what I'm doing, and by being able to like reflect off of like, you know, like I have a lot of people who I'm working with right now. I'm sorry, not a lot of people. I have 3 people that I'm working with right now because I just started. But the 3 people, they all worry about fear of success, which is a big reflection to me, because that's something that I also have a fear of, you know, a fear of being seen, of sharing my work and being rejected, etc. So it's a great way to actually like create writing exercises that help us deal with that. You know, and work through it in a creative way. And it can be as simple as like, you know, one writing prompt that I remember doing is a friend of mine I was struggling with a past relationship. I know it doesn't have anything to do with her fear of success, but it actually did. Like she was so engrossed with this relationship that she didn't see that it was holding her back from so many things. So I created a very simple writing exercise. I always call it 2 characters from point A to point B, and there's an obstacle in the middle. But I changed the parameters of that writing prompt so that it kind of fit with the story she told me, and I put her ex as a character, like in the way, and she has to get to the other side. And her story around that has been just incredible. In fact, like, you know, she ended up writing a blog post where she tied in like her experience of being a trapeze artist and going through this. And I was like, oh my God, she never wanted to write for herself before. And I just feel like with all of these things that she's doing now, it really started with like that, like realizing that boy, her story that she wrote about her ex gave her so much peace and closure. Like, because she intellectually knew it, but for some reason writing that story made her integrate it into her heart. And I think that, like I said, we don't know what the power of creativity can do. The power of rewriting, I call it rewriting your story, rewriting your trauma, transforming it into art. And like, for anyone who knows what it's like to be heartbroken or disappointed or rejected, like that's a whole wealth of emotion that you can put into a story and help other people who may be going through that. And in that way, transform your trauma and heal yourself, because you're getting it out of you. At least that's how I see it.
No, you're definitely right. I was reading, I'm trying to remember which book this was in. I'm so bad with details, but it was talking about how, you know, on your, essentially the right side of your brain, you're dealing with all of these emotions and feelings and art and all these things, and the left side of your brain is your words and thoughts, and and how when you take your feelings, take whether it's trauma or whatever it is, and put those into words, it's self-therapy. Like writing it is more disciplined, so you can have a lot of benefit from that. Saying it out loud also, it can do the same thing because you're putting words to the feeling. And so that's why when you're saying something, you should always say, like when you're upset about something, I feel like this, because when you name the feeling, when you name, instead of accusing, for example. But in this case, to put it even in a really organized form, like writing, or if you wrote a song, or if you, whatever it is that you did, putting it into words, it brings the two sides of the brain together, which brings healing to whatever might have been separated on the sides of the brain. And so it's a very real thing, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, it's a real scientific thing that putting those things into words literally helps heal you. It's not just, oh, I feel so much better because I got it out. Like,
Yes.
it does feel better because you got it out, but putting it down in words, it's not the same. Like, you could just scream and yell in anger and you would be getting it out, but it would not have the same benefits as putting it
Yes.
into words.
I'm so like astounded that you said that, because you're right. Like, and I didn't know about the scientific part of that, but I told you guys when I moved to Paris, like from San Francisco, I was actually getting over a really, really tough heartbreak. I was, almost gonna get married, and then that didn't fall through. It was very Eat, Pray, Love, Elizabeth Gilbert, if you guys read that book. I was like, I'm running out. If I'm gonna be sad, I might as well be sad in Paris. Let me make my life 100 million times harder, because no, I'm kidding. But it was my dream to move there. And one of the things I remember, it had been over a year already. I was living in Paris and I still wasn't over my ex. And he had moved on, like he was already with somebody else. I think he was engaged. Oh my God. Like it was all these things. And I heard through the grapevine that he was planning to come to Europe on a Europe tour. But when I had originally asked him, he said he would never go to Paris, he said. So my song kind of became born out of like drunk writers, where I started writing poetry. And then when I went to London, again, being invited, I was invited to write a song. And we ended up writing this song on my last night in Paris. It took us an hour and a half to record and write this. It was the fastest, most creative, thing. And I feel like I had this training from drunk writers to be able to move this quickly. And so anyway, so the song is called My Last Cigarette, and it's a very, like, for me, heart-wrenching and beautiful and great. And it actually ended up winning a songwriting competition, second place in a songwriting competition in Paris. And I got to perform it for Fête de la Musique, and I actually got on the news and stuff like that too, like as one of the Filipino artists performing in Paris. And like, again, like all of those things happened, and I'm so grateful that it happened. But what was so cathartic for me is that once I had written this song, like, and then I had to, even to promote it, I had to put it out there, and like, oh my God, my friends, my family are gonna see this, and you're gonna see me, like, they're gonna see how heartbroken I was with this song. But at the same time, the song was very powerful and uplifting at the end. And it was, like I said, it was the most therapeutic thing I could do, because after that it didn't have the same power over me as it did before the heartbreak. In fact, I was very grateful for it. I was ready to be his friend. He didn't want to be my friend, but I was like, okay, well, at least I got a song out of it. But I was so amazed that I was able to create art out of that deep, deep, dark pain. And it just brought me so much joy on the other end of it. And on top of like getting more people in my life. And even when I sang that song or shared that song, like people were crying, and they're like, this is, because they could sense the emotion out of it. And I'm not saying it's like a popular, I haven't done anything with it except, put it on YouTube or anything. But to me, that song is it means so much to me. And I want to do more. So I'm actually working on writing more songs now. So
can I ask, do you feel is it easier for you to share with people that you don't know at all, or with people that you know better, or
People, I think people not in my family.
well, that's kind of what I'm asking, like,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
where, and I'm thinking like for myself and for other people who sometimes you feel like, oh, well, I have to talk to my mom or my sister or my cousin or whoever, like, I guess your thoughts on that, sharing with people that you don't know at all, or that you know
Yeah.
from certain things, or like, how would you recommend?
For me, it was easier to share with people I didn't know. I think it was easier for me to have a safe space of like-minded people who were there in a fully supportive role, because especially when you're starting out to create, it can be you're your own worst critic already. Like, at least that's how I felt. So sometimes getting people that you do know, and then even if they say something and they mean to be constructively, critical, like it can hurt in a way that you're like, no, I'm not ready for you to criticize my emotional my emotional investment into this piece. So, and I think building up that, I guess, that thick skin in that, in a safe environment first, testing out your ideas in a safe environment first, and getting that love and support from people who understand what you're going through, who understand what it's like to put yourself nakedly and vulnerably like that. I think after that, you're like, you know what? I can face anything. I can face anyone. And I think I did rely on that when I started to become more brave and doing more public things with my writing or my singing. So
Cool, thank you.
thank you.
Can we go back to what Becca was saying? Becca was talking about how when you've had a trauma and you write it down, it helps you to have more of a grasp on it instead of it having a grasp on you. But you do something a little bit different, Isabel. You have them write it, but you have them change what happened to them.
Yes. So this is reserved for. I don't do it with every writing prompt, but for some people, I call it rewriting your trauma. So, for example, I had one of my writers. She came to me with a trauma. She wouldn't describe what it was. She was giving me very cryptic situation. She goes, "It's not a man, it's not a woman, but it happened when she was third grade." That's really all I had. So I said, okay. And she wouldn't tell me what it was because she's like, "I can't tell you. It's so big." I said, okay. We're gonna write a story, and this time you're gonna go back to being third grade. We're gonna go to the moment before it happened. And I said, but this time you've got a superpower, and whatever superpower this is, it's gonna stop whatever this thing is whatever is gonna happen. It's gonna stop it from happening. And I just want you to write a story on that. And so she started writing a story, but I write the story too. So I ended up writing a story about basically a third grader being bullied by an eighth grader. And I said, the moment that the bully was trying to throw her into a closet, she screamed and the bully fell to the ground with no noise, just grabbing their ears, and blood started coming out of their ears. And it was a very short piece, but what ended up happening is she was so moved by that story, because she's like, how did you know? And so she ended up telling me she was jumped by 13 girls in this period of being third grade, and being kicked and beaten. And she said she remembers herself being outside of her body watching this happen to her. And then we talked about, like, doing that. And then we talked about okay, like, we talked about her, like, what is the gift that bully gave you? Because that superpower that you have that because of those bullies. Now where has it shown up in your life where now you're the one standing up? And and so she wrote a story about that, and it's getting them to realize, like, all of their trauma that they hung on to, the story that they had to them. Not to say that, of course, it happened, but what they made up about it is the story that they hang on to is maybe doesn't serve them. Maybe it doesn't let them realize the gift that they got out of that trauma, because everything that happens has good and bad to it. In fact, I can name all of these, traumatic events in my life, like the heartbreak, and seeing all the good. I mean, Paris, drunk writers, now having my own business. I mean, if I hadn't gone through that heartbreak, I wouldn't have this. If I hadn't figured out, how to deal with still having this issue with my ex and not doing the song, like I might still be pining for him and like not, and just sitting at home in my apartment hiding, so it's stuff like that. It's another way. The way I like to see it progress is that it's a way of rewriting the story, changing it so that it doesn't have the same blocks that it gave you before. Like you control it now. Like it already happened, but now you get to change what you made up about it. Now she's able to see a different perspective. Maybe I can explain it with another exercise. I had one where one of my good friends, she was very angry at this girl that she was dating because she felt like this girl had misled her. And so I had her do an exercise where I was like, okay, rewrite the story, but write a character based on this girl, based on this person. And what was interesting when she wrote her story is she had it play out exactly the same. Everything happened exactly the same way between them, except for that girl's perspective. And so for her, she was telling me to go see if that girl, if she just changed her perspective. And I said, well, technically, this is your story and it's your perspective. You were giving her your perspective. So it's you. Like we're talking about you. You're the one who made up what she feels and what she thinks. You don't really know. Like I said, everyone going through their own stuff. And so it's like, and so she was able to put herself in that person's perspective and get like the closure from that person without that person ever even being in front of her. Like she made all these realizations herself, and didn't even realize she was making these realizations herself. So I think it just helps to have like another person, like be your mirror, be your reflector in these sessions. So that's what I try to do, is be a mirror for them.
It's funny. I write romance, and so many romance authors come out and consistently say that they're the stories that you read of theirs are parts of their lives. And most of us write in whatever that traumatic or bad effect or the man who did you wrong, and we rewrite the story to the way we would have wanted it to be. Or the writer who struggled with depression and writes that into their character and how the person overcame it, even if the author is still struggling with it. And I think it's probably common in all genres in a certain way, but there's something about the relationship building that you have to write into a romance book, that your characters really have to be vulnerable. And so many authors are writing stuff in, and sometimes not even realizing it. And I just recently finished my series, and it wasn't until I had released, I think it was the 4th book, that I was like, there is a baby in every single book I write because I can't have them. And you realize that as you read all these stories, I mean, literally just about everything that I would have dreamed about, without struggling with fertility, made it into my books. So if I didn't have that huge block in my life, I was literally writing the happily ever afters that I always thought I wanted. And now as I'm writing books that's over with, that they're looking very different than they did before. And so I think sometimes you're doing it and you're not realizing it. It's just the characters are coming to you as you're going, and other people are deliberately doing it. But either way, it's extremely healing without even intentionally knowing what you're doing half the time. And even if it is throwing your ex in there just so you could knock them off in the end of the book, I mean, that works too, right?
Yeah.
So there's something to be said about putting it all down the way you wanted it to go.
Exactly. And it's fun to also just dress up characters. Like, I'm like, let's make them so completely different, just loosely base it off somebody, but change it so, you know what I mean? Like change it so completely that, and like giving your character a cool backstory. Like, it can be just as simple as you just want to have fun. You have fun with it, learn new things. I mean, I remember I was like looking up like different ways to kill people, like the perfect murder, and I was like, my God, if someone was looking through my history, they would think I was a serial killer.
Oh yeah, girl.
But I was like, no, this is what writers do. Like,
yes.
like it's not
weird
fun.
stuff on my Google searches.
Exactly. But think about it. If you have a character, let's say, who's obsessed with like being rich, don't you want him to be robbed? Like, don't you want, you know, like you want
Right.
your character to go through shit. Otherwise, no, you know what I mean? Otherwise, where's the story? Where's the
It has to
drama?
be
Why do I
conflict.
even?
Yeah.
How do we care? Yeah, how do we care about you otherwise? And so, and what more than drawing from your own personal experiences and then just dressing it up so that nobody knows exactly,
So
but it's still you.
I write the series I'm working on now. The characters, a lot of them are based on composites of people, like maybe 2 or 3 different people. And Winter read one, and I'm not going to say any names of characters, but she was like, "Is this person so and so?" Because we had a mutual acquaintance. And I was like, "Oh, you picked that up, huh?" Because the person doesn't look the same, has a different history, whatever, but the way they talk and act is like the person that we know. She got it. I was like, okay, I have to be careful about that.
Yeah.
But that's what makes it real. I think
Oh, yeah.
you know, if you change it enough, but you
Very good
capture like
character
the,
development.
yeah, or even just one essence of somebody, and you're like, you know, wow, just one thing that I got. But I love to do this exercise where people just meet somebody from the first time. I'm like, okay, pick the person next to you or pick somebody you don't know, and you're gonna base a character off of them. And people get like so freaked out because I give them really crazy backstories, and they're like, dude, like that's not me. I'm like, it's not supposed to be you. It's supposed to be
Yeah.
just somebody that looks like you, or just like maybe
Right.
one thing that made me
Some
go, oh,
mannerisms or
I'm gonna make you a CIA agent. I don't know, like, you know, whatever.
Yeah, it's fun.
So
And
I
it can
gotta
be a
ask,
really good way
because
to
what
get
you're
characters.
doing is obviously encouraging creativity in others, but to be able to come up with these crazy stories and the amount of writing prompts that you must have needed for this. I mean, were you a writer before? Like, I feel like I missed a piece in this story. Where did you go from like popping up in
Yeah, I
Paris
know,
and all
right?
of a sudden being like, let's organize a bunch of writing prompts? Like, because
I
where
know,
does
right?
that come from in you?
You know, when I was going, I grew up in Guam, which is a small island, and I think in high school, from the time I was a little kid, I think I discovered like Little Women, Louisa May Alcott. I think I was only in first grade, so I started reading classic books from a very young age, and I was obsessed. They're all abridged versions, but I read Dickens, Dumas. I mean, Robinson Crusoe, all of the greats. I think I was privy enough to fall in love with writing with novels at such an early age. And so when I would go to school and I started, you know, doing essays, almost every homework assignment, I'd turn it into a play. Like I would I would like end up writing it into play, and then my best friend and I would learn it and then act it out, and then they would end up having us perform it in every class because they're like, oh, we love this, you know. And so yeah, and then I started competing in the National Forensic League, and so that's where you take a published piece and you perform it. So I think having that background, I mean, and I loved it. I won competitions and stuff, and I did a lot of creative things when I was younger. And then like after I decided to go to college, you know, I kind of fell into being practical, you know, following what my parents wanted to do. And I felt I was going to be a lawyer, and then I decided I didn't want to be a lawyer because, funny enough, the Supreme Court justice I was California Supreme Court justice I was interning for, he told me that he used to love reading, and he stopped loving reading because of all the briefs that he read. He doesn't read for pleasure anymore, and that was enough for me. I don't want to be a lawyer anymore.
Oh.
I was like, no, I love reading way too much, you know. And so anyway, so I ended up falling into banking, moved up really quickly. And when I had always been dreaming about Paris. In fact, I think I made a commitment to live in Paris for a year. That was my goal, to live before I would turn 30. Then I turned 31, and then the breakup happened. And I literally was dreaming about Paris every day. So I met a girl from Paris. We ended up being very close friends, and she invited me to come stay with her in Paris, like while I got myself situated. And I mean, so I got myself there and joined a writing group, and joined a writing class. and the professor did timed writing prompts, and that was for me like no drinking. It was a strict classroom setting, no drinking at all. But I remember like, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and I wrote so much. It was just pouring out of me, all of this stuff. And I was like the only one in the whole class that would share. Nobody else would share, which was so weird for me. But the teacher, like, and I kind of got really close, and she was saying, told me a lot, like she gave me a lot of kudos for being brave and also for my writing. And then she encouraged me when I told her how sad I was when the class was ending. She told me, why don't you start your own group? And we were at a bar and we were having wine, and I was like, hello, wine and drinking, drunk writers. And that's really how it happened. Yeah. And so yeah, and awesome. and honestly, I didn't know any writing. I mean, I didn't have any writing prompts. I wanted to say that it really just happened very organically. I mean, maybe a couple of writing prompts I might have picked up here and there, but for the most part, it's just been like, let's pick a picture in the room. or I really, like I said, 2 truths and a lie, that's probably my favorite. So everyone tells 3 things about themselves and one's a lie. And I just get so many writing prompts from that, because people will talk about like, meeting a celebrity or like what, some crazy thing that they did. So I'm like, let's write about that. Let's make a writing prompt and we're going to just do that. So that's how I did it. Other moderators, they do like go look up like actual writing prompts, and we do those too. But I think the way I did the group sessions was just very, very light and not really very structured, except for like 5 minutes to write. Just write. Write as much as you can, and then share if you want to. So it was very simple. And I'm just fortunate that now I think people are just like, are liking it and trusting me enough to share it with me.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's neat.
There was something I was going to bring up, but I can't remember it. I know I was going to ask if we had any other bigger questions, but then I want to kind of hear from you. Winter, Becca, do you have any other questions?
From me? Oh, I was just gonna say.
He usually has a plan of like a list of questions. I want to make sure we can.
I think I mostly asked.
Do you have more, Becca?
Good. Well, there was something, but I can't remember exactly what it was. It was back when talking about the writing down the story a different way or the way it happened, but with a different twist. And just how I can see how that would be helpful, and that
empowering.
Yeah, they say like the only way out is through. So if you just pretend it didn't happen, and if you're just even complaining about it or feeling bad about it, you can feel bad about it your whole life. But put it to paper or share it in a group or whatever, and next thing you know, you're getting past it. And it's really powerful.
Yeah, and like even when I do this session, I can tell when someone is avoiding, and sometimes when I'm doing it, like they don't want to do it, but they ask me, I really want to do it. I'm like, well, okay, you're not really doing the exercise, but it's okay. Like I'm like, it's okay, because I still understand, like whatever they end up writing about, you're like, that's where it is. The emotion's coming out. That's where the pain is coming out. And I think that's why I think it is great that I do the exercise, like, I mean, or if there are other people that the people at least are able to do the exercise, because I wrote the story for her, like my friend that couldn't deal with the trauma, she could not do the exercise at all. But it was powerful for her to see me come up with that story and come up with create it. Like I said, I just made it up, and that's what I told her. I said, I'm just making it. I'm just feeding off of your energy. She's like, but how do you know? I'm like, I didn't know. And so, and like I said, sometimes it's chipping away at that story, like getting them to see like, oh, this is what you made up about it. This is what you decided in that moment. These are the things that you told yourself. It's like even just being aware of how you tell the story, is so eye-opening, right? And I think like, in these things, like it's not a quick fix. And that's what I told her. It's not like just, oh, you just write it once and it's done. Like sometimes you have to keep, searching and keep looking, but it's
because there's different aspects.
I wrote 6 books.
Lots of aspects to every situation.
Yeah.
And you might still have to revisit that again as you reach different points in your life because part of us gets
Chipping
stuck.
it off.
Anytime, like when something big happens, which is not usually a 1-minute event, right? It's usually something big that we deal with over a period of time, like an abuse, for example.
Yeah.
Being touched one time inappropriately does not have the same effect as having a neighbor that assaults you over and over, for example. You know what I'm saying? Like there is a difference. And the bigger traumas often are the longer ones. Dealing with infertility, it's not just one time, oh, I found out I can't do this. No, it's a long struggle, right? That keeps going on. So there's a lot of depth and there are a lot of different things to explore and a lot of things. So
well, you start seeing the entanglements of everything, how everything kind of is connected. Like, you can, like when you get your story out, you start seeing the ripple effects, right? Because there's every action that leads to something. And so even just like writing that out for yourself, and then maybe somebody else going, oh, they write a different perspective, a different way that they would have handled it, for example. And you're like, there are so many things that I didn't see that was happening while that was happening.
Right.
And it's even, honestly, it's this is a harder thing to sell, but it's even like, I think it's stepping one of the things that I do sometimes that's kind of difficult is to step in the shoes of the perpetrator, or whoever you perceive as a perpetrator. I think that can be very hard to do. Like for me, because I'm more objective, because it didn't happen to me, I can write about it, right? A little more objectively, a little more like unbiasedly, and I can be more free with my creativity. But it's understanding that someone might be too in it to deal with that too. So there's definitely being able to twist it, to change it, to tweak the writing prompt so that it's less scary for somebody to attempt it. And I like using creativity. I like using let's make up a story, let's make up a character, let's make up someone who's not you, but somewhat like you going through this. And like that could be a way I could tweak it. But that, like, it's just it's another vehicle, I think, to use, especially as creatives. Like, and I think a lot about like writers, like for example, like myself, who I, for a very long time, I had let that creativity die. Like I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go stick to my lane, banking, and this other life that I had, this other person I just have to leave her behind because that's just not me anymore. And that was not true. And I was really unhappy. And I think a lot about like schizophrenia, like, like a lot of people who are artists, they end up like, because they can't get their art out or express themselves. Like some people do end up with like that kind of mental imbalance and that kind of mental pressure. And so I think that this is so important for people to understand, like, oh, there's other ways. If talk therapy doesn't help you, or if other things aren't helping you, like use the art within you, use the traumas that you've housed inside of you. Let's get them out. Let's put them on paper. Let's see what we can create out of that, and see if we can transform it so that it helps you, or that you see the gifts that it helped you, because it didn't come for no reason.
And it could be a gift to someone else because you were sharing that to help someone else realize that they're not alone, that they.
And it can become your mission, your purpose. Like, I want to say, people, like, you have two choices when something happens to you, right? Like for people who have been sexually abused, sometimes they become abusers, or they go the opposite route, right? So like, what makes that difference? And it's honestly, it's the awareness. It's the awareness. It's understanding yourself and knowing that you make your own decisions and you're responsible for your own decisions, regardless of what happens to you. You still own that part. And I think that's something that we as coaches can bring to other people, remind them that,
But before you go into that deep place with them, sorry. Yeah. I was just gonna say, before she goes into that deep place with them, she has them write a safe and happy place first, so that if it gets too deep, they can always go back to it.
Yes, and I love that. Yeah, that's one of the things I usually start off is, I have them write what I call like the lighter exercises, because I just get kind of, it's almost very meditation like, you know, because I tell them, tell me about your favorite place. Tell me about this place where you feel the most centered, the most calm. If you don't have it, make it up. And I get them to engage all of their senses. Like, what are you smelling? What are you tasting? What are you hearing? What are you feeling? Like, try to make that real. And once they can get into that exercise, I know that I can go do the other exercises with them, because they understand that it's kind of like displacing, you know, taking themselves outside of themselves for a little, like suspending belief for a little bit, and let's play in this safe world. And I tell them, this is your space no matter what. And I also tell them that they can create as many safe places as they can. They can continue to do this exercise over and over again. In fact, I do every time I write a new happy place. So, or I write a new description of what my happy place is. So
That's cool.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing all that. That's very interesting.
you're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, so we've only got a couple minutes left, but if we had to provide, right, to those who are listening today or in the future and so forth, maybe people who haven't worked with writing prompts before, like, where do you start? I mean, there's a million of them out there. There's websites, there's this and that. I mean, what is really the best approach for somebody who's wanting to get into some short-term, quick writing prompts for whatever reason? Maybe it's to write through their own stuff. Maybe it's just to get in the habit of writing every day, like a morning pages thing, or because there's a lot of mixed information out there on use with writing prompts as well.
Yes. I'm going to say join Drunk Writers, and then you'll find some free prompts there. But I think I can't sell the benefits of having a writing coach, having somebody hold you accountable, having somebody to bounce your ideas off of. And I mean, there's just nothing like having that kind of support when you're sharing like your most vulnerable self, you know, when you're sharing your art and you're making things up, you know. So I think that is one of the biggest gifts that you can give yourself. And if nothing else, if you just want to work on yourself, it's work on loving yourself and fixing your mindset first. Because if you don't already love it, and you don't love yourself, and you don't love yourself enough to share your gift out in the world and know that you're going to make an impact with maybe not every person, but you don't want that either. You want, you know, you're not gonna do that either, but just loving yourself enough to invest in yourself and to know that your art is important and your art is impactful. And so working on that first, your mindset first, more than anything else, is the most important thing. And then the everything else will come. Because I could say, you know, time yourself, do it yourself. But I know myself, I don't normally do it myself. But when I have a coach, and I know I have something, a deadline, when I have, you know, a little bit of pressure, like that's when I can. That's when I can, you know, put myself in that mindset to create. So there's a little bit of like forcing yourself until it comes naturally for you. And the more you practice, the easier it will become.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that makes
so we
sense.
can put your website or
Yes,
in the comments, of course. And is there anything else that we should share about your contact information, like right now, for people?
Yeah, sure. My email is drunkwriterstravel@gmail.com. You can also find me at drunkwriters.com. I definitely recommend Winter if you need an amazing writing coach. She's the only one to have an experience. I'm sure you're all wonderful as well. But Winter has been really instrumental for me in getting myself organized and started, and treating this like an actual business, not a hobby. That's the biggest thing.
Very good.
That I can reach more people. That's the goal.
And you're on Facebook too.
Yes, please find me on Facebook. Thank you.
Awesome.
And it's what, Drunk Writers on Facebook?
Drunk Writers with an S.com
Yes.
for your email?
Drunk Writers. For my website.
Or I mean for the website.
Yeah. drunkwriters.com.
Just trying to put some in the comments so when people will go through.
And I just spelled it wrong. I'm editing it. I put 2 Ks. My computer's slow, so I
Yeah, yay! Yes, drunk
Nikki
writer.
is the winner here. She's got it right.
All right, we've got it on the video, so we'll make sure we get it correct. We'll link up to everything on our YouTube page as well. Isabel, thank you so much for joining us today. I think,
Thank
you know, I really didn't know what to expect after
Appreciate you.
reading about your business. Really, really great information. I think we could all agree there was lots of stuff here that
Yes.
so much
lots
more
of stuff.
than I had expected as far as even just little bits of creativity and how important it is. If nothing else, the line "your art is important" should stick with everyone because it
Yes.
truly, truly is. So
Yeah.
I've got 9 o'clock on the dot here. Next week, I'm making an executive decision, ladies. We're talking about pets because we keep bringing it up and it always seems to be our default topic. So
Yes.
join us next Tuesday at 8 o'clock. We will talk about the importance of pets and the animals in our lives because, you know, it's a fun topic.
And we'll
Yeah.
tell
How Becca
stories
did-
about the rug.
Oh.
Oh,
And how Becca
yeah.
didn't get attacked tonight. How about that?
Oh, he was
Yeah,
trying from the
Cat
side.
hasn't been
He
here all
just couldn't
day.
get in front of me. He was over there. I was pushing him away.
I saw no tail waggling through.
Nope.
Yeah,
I didn't leave him a lane
it's too
tonight.
funny.
Aw.
All right, very
Thanks,
good.
everyone.
Well,
Thank
thank
you,
you again,
ladies.
Isabel. It
Thank
was
you again
great.
for coming.
Thank you
We'll talk to
too.
y'all soon.
Great chat.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye, ladies.